It was chapter 7th and 8th.
Yesterday.
Yes. No, 6th and 7th, right? Yes. 6th and 7th.
I have chapter.
Yes, 6th and 7th. Yes. So in that also you can correct it up.
Oh, we put 8 on the page.
Yeah. 8 will come today. When you have finished the 7th, we are just on 2/3 of the 7th off, and now 1/3 remains.
Yeah.
And this part deals with, yes, continuation of the 7th now, in which the subject matter is ego and the dualities. And there we saw that the creation of the ego and dualities was a necessary step, which has been symbolized in some schools of religion and philosophy as a fall of man. And the fall of man is this disconnection or separation from the original divine consciousness and assumption of limitations, in which the separation becomes active, so to say, dynamic, and has consequences in what is called human life. And when you say it is a fall, it only means it is a lure of, Adam attracted by Eve is the Purusha, the subjective consciousness attracted by, or if you say, lured by the potentialities of nature, which is felt within his own self. Nature is felt within its own self, and when the potentiality is seen in nature, there is an attraction on the part of the subjective consciousness to accept the lure and the consequences of what follows. You see, the redemption comes by rejoining the divine consciousness and bringing it into life, into nature. You see, that is real redemption. Redemption is not merely it's by abandoning the world or abandoning life. It is by a process of transformation or transmutation of the being that has now undergone a limitation, widening of the same limitation into a universal and a transcendent consciousness, and embodying on earth and in nature all the consequences of that universal and transcendent consciousness. Means embodying quite another nature, a transformation not only of consciousness and being, but a transformation of nature. That is the solution of the problem. Well, we were somewhere there. Now we must discuss it, otherwise we don't get anywhere. Last one is like a forest, and you'll be lost around your life. Now, is it possible for the ego to widen out into another universal consciousness? That was the problem where we were yesterday, isn't it? Yes. And normally, reason refuses to admit this potentiality and possibility to life. Perfectibility is not envisaged by a change of consciousness, by reason, because reason is overcome by the actual, by fact, by what it has to face immediately. Now, reason says, how can it be? And that is why I pleaded yesterday in my talk on psychology that those who have got the true vision of life see what is from what can be. A world that is from a world to be. What is the world going to be? From there they judge what is. The limitation of reason comes and say, what is final, almost. So what is insurmountable. How can? Well, that is how reason does argue, and probably we argued yesterday also and accepted the position that so far as ignorance and dualities are concerned, the reading and feeling and knowledge of the ego is valid for its own sake. But it has no absolute validity in the sense that that is the only knowledge possible. It is possible to rise to another consciousness where all the values that reason admits as true, final, and binding all disappear, and quite another revaluation can be valid. Well, this is the position which we have taken last time, and here reason refusing to admit the possibility of any perfection, and that creates, you see, then is that this universe working under a law of eternal imperfection? Is it imperfection the badge of this universe and this creation? That will not tally with the omnipotence and omniscience of God. That will not go well with that reasoning, you understand? Even if you admit The world is eternally bound to. This is the stand taken by so many people who have despaired of any possibility of, change in human consciousness, that they have ignored those people who have actually undergone the change of consciousness, because they've always been overcome by quantity. You see, vast people are subject to ego and desire and dualities and suffering and pain and ignorance and selfishness and death and so on. So, but they forget at least several hundred people who rose above this consciousness and declared that this is not the final possible experience to human being, that there is another experience possible to man, that it is possible to rise to a universal consciousness, to a divine consciousness, and remain alive and bring something of the light of that to life. Well, this reason naturally ignores and all the time argues and says it is because it is overcome by the actual and the immediate. How is it possible, says this reason, to transcend? And yesterday I gave you the reason. That same reasoning the ape would have also argued if it was faced with the possibility of conceiving a more perfect being than itself. You see, if you tell, he would not. And if you say that no, not only such a being is possible, that you yourself will undergo such a transformation that from you an Einstein will evolve, he would laugh at it. You see, he would simply say that is not possible. Even if I conceive that such a being more perfect, complete and capable of knowledge than myself is possible, the ape would not believe that from the ape such a being could evolve. You see, that would be too much for it. You see, that would, he would say that is not possible. Just the same that is happening to human reasoning, human mind and human, outer senses and outer knowledge, when it is faced with the problem of a possible divine perfection. It always refuses, like the ape refusing the possibility and potentiality of self-evolution to a more perfect, being. And yet still, reason is contradictory in this refusal, you will see. Because what does reason itself do? The reason itself does not limit itself by sense data. I see that the sky and the earth have met there. This is the first sense data. When I submit it to reason, reason says, well, let me see whether it's quite true. So reason in its own realm of limited knowledge admits the possibility of correcting the evidence that is given to it and arriving at higher and higher conclusions or higher and higher generalizations of knowledge. Because reason is a faculty for pursuit of knowledge. After all, it wants to know. And when it wants to know, the first data of the sense submitted to it, well, pure reason does not admit as final. Mixed reason, or if you say it is there is a double reason allowed, mixed and dependent. When reason is mixed and dependent, it depends upon the sense data. But when it works in its purity, well, it does not limit itself by the sense data, corrects it, refuses to accept the first sense evidence, and goes beyond. So when you pursue the truth, reason itself is overcoming and throwing away the first evidence of its sense data and corrects it in order to arrive at knowledge of the truth of material world, truth of fact of life. And the argument which reason gives with regard to psychology of man or its development of consciousness is just the contrary of what it does in the evidence of senses. It says, how can you overcome pain? How can you overcome death? And it doesn't want to see that life unanimously never accepts the pain as natural. There is always, as he calls it here, I think he has used a very fine phrase here. The sensation is we ignore the sense that sensation, sovereign impulse is to reject pain. When you get the sensation of pain, the first reaction of the whole nervous system is to reject it. Not to say, oh yes, pain is natural. No. The very nervous system, without mind intervening, without any logic, refuses. The rejection of pain itself, well, reason doesn't take count of this great fact that this rejection itself is not merely an instinct which is important or bound to remain important. It is a line of a potentiality. It is an indication of a potentiality which, it is pursued, might lead to some practical result. After all, that is what man has actually tried, even reason. It has tried to overcome pain by anesthesia, isn't it? It has tried to overcome pain by several methods, so that overcoming of pain, and now this is by mechanical method. Is it not possible to do it by psychological process? Because the very reaction of sensation sense organism is itself to reject pain immediately. And so the sensation of life, or the insistence of life, is on eternity or immortality of life and not on death. So that is a line of indication which the reason refuses to accept. And because reason is overcome by apparent fact, but even from the point of view of reason, if you look at it from the point of reason, how does reason arrive at a mastery? It tries to probe into the phenomenon and tries to find out the cause. When it has known the cause, it is able to master the result. Well, here also what reason has to do is to find out the cause of pain, the cause of suffering, the cause of imperfection, and then it can apply the knowledge of cause to establish mastery. But what reason actually does in its own field is that it is busy with secondary, methods and remedies, and not with the original root causes. Reason goes to secondary cause, how a thing happens, not why it happens, what makes it happen. No, how a process takes place. And in being entangled in this knowledge of the secondary causes, well, reason does not want to know or cannot know the root cause of what happens, and the remedy for men lies in knowledge of the root cause. If reason could penetrate into the root cause of pain and suffering and duality, well, reason would be able to find out how to set it right. Because all knowledge, when it is real, is power. Power means knowledge is power. And if it can know the cause, it can set right the result. Well, and the ultimate reality of which we spoke in the last 2 days about life divine, that it is an omnipresent reality, an infinite of being, an infinite conscious power, unlimited power of delight. That is the basic truth, the material cause and the efficient cause of the world. Well, then here in the ego and the fall into duality, knowledge of the Brahman, knowledge of this infinite, widening out to the ego into the cosmic and the infinite consciousness, would eliminate the root cause, not the secondary cause of ignorance, imperfection, suffering, and duality. You see, this reason allows itself to be overcome by the immediate, and it applies itself to secondary causes and not to the root causes. If one can bring the infinite consciousness into play and widen out the ego into the infinite consciousness, then it would eliminate automatically the root cause of this duality, ego, and all the consequences of suffering and pain and ignorance. This is the remedy suggested here by the fall of ego, fall into ego and dualities, is the acceptance of the possibility of widening of consciousness into another plane, so to say, a plane of infinity. And when that is done, the root cause of ignorance and suffering is removed. Reason refuses because it is overcome by the immediate and says, so many people don't know anything about it, so why? Well, that is the beginning of all truth is like that, that it begins with the minority of one to all, and it is ultimately when it succeeds that the gradual spread of acceptance of truth takes place in life. You see? Spiritual experience of this widening out in the infinity would bring about this result of elimination of the consequence of ego and the limitations of duality. Then one finds, says Aurobindo in Life Divine, that not only oneself is that, but all is that. All is that. Not only when one widens out into the infinite, it is not as if he has come into a special, personal, individual possession of a truth which belongs to nobody. In fact, it is a beginning of knowing that all is the infinite, all is the Satchidananda. You see, that all is that. And that only exists. And still, multiplicity is allowed. Forms are allowed, tendencies are allowed, individual egos are allowed. In this Satchidananda, it is allowed to deform, to distort its original truth in life. And even ego reaction is allowed. That one sees when one widens out into the infinite consciousness, that this process has taken place, and it is not as if Satchidananda has been overcome. The infinite was faced by something opposite to itself, a not self or a anti-divinity that came into play and overcame the omnipotence and omniscience of the divine and made the divine accept multiplicity and fall into ego and duality. It is as it were this widening out into the infinite has allowed the creation and fall into the ego of its own self, has allowed the division, has allowed the play of variation upon the basis of its unity, and has allowed the deformation and distortion of its original truth. Even ego reaction is allowed to create conflict in life. You see, this is tolerated and allowed. But this can be set right. It is allowed because it knows that this has to be set right. It is as it were you take up a course which at first appears as if just the opposite of your ultimate end. But you know that it is only by adopting this course that you will arrive at your ultimate end. You see, it is by adoption of this fall that the elimination and we say it is possible. But it can be set right. Ego creation and creation of duality is the essential condition of existence in the universe. For the Satchidananda to create a multiple universe, it is a necessity. And when one gets rid of the ignorance of the ego, then duality is also automatically eliminated. When the ignorance of ego is removed, well, then the duality and the consequence of duality are automatically eliminated, and ego widens out into cosmic consciousness. Even when sense and mind are enlarged, people say, and the reason also argues, that all this knowledge of identity, knowledge by widening out consciousness into infinity or cosmic consciousness, is moonshine and it's abstraction, it's not possible. That's what they say. And what is the remedy? You acquire more and more knowledge of sense data. You see, develop your sciences and the knowledge, different departments, sociology, physics, chemistry, then astrophysics, all kinds of mathematics and so on. Go on increasing, and you enlarge this field of sense and mind. Here he points out that that would not solve the problem. However much you go on for infinity, you see, it would be moving on the same plane. Now the plane of sense and mind is little. You say no, widen, so your plane will become like that. But you'll be on this plane. The solution lies in some other plane. However much you go on enlarging the field of physical research or scientific inquiry, you are not going to solve the fundamental root problem. You are only attacking secondary causes. The root problem lies in getting away from the plane of consciousness where you are working. You are working on the plane of ego here. So you say, this is small, I will widen it. You widen it as much as you like, even to infinity. But you are not making for height of consciousness or ascent of consciousness. Until that is done, a radical change in the consciousness is envisaged and brought about, well, the solution cannot be found. Now here he says that if you go on enlarging the field of sense knowledge and mental knowledge, however wide you may be, it will be only increasing and enlarging the field of phenomena. not of the reality. Phenomenon, usually increasing, adding, as he says, feeding yourself with more and more grass, not with any substantial food. It is knowledge in one sense. It is some knowledge attained. Every addition is something solid. Yes, true. But it is as it were accumulating dry grass all the time. Well, it is hay. It is not solid, substantial food, which would bring about a change in your system. If change in system is to be brought about, then some other radical food is to be given, a more nourishing food, which is a spiritual food. Well, and that is the knowledge by identity, knowledge by oneness, not knowledge by separating the object and the subject and then taking the sense data and subject into to reason its operation and arriving at a conclusion and going on progressively increasing the knowledge of the phenomena. You see? No, knowledge by identity is the remedy. And when you say knowledge by identity means increase or expansion of self-awareness. Now one is aware of, when you say man, when you say I, you ask him, oh, I am body, or I am desire, or I am impulses, or I am ideas, I am thoughts, I am feeling, I am emotions. Yes, that is the limitation of the present formal. This self-awareness, when it is widened, and when the I is all, then the all is included in that I, because it is not a small I, but the I with a capital I, which is infinity. And therefore, the knowledge of the content is contained in the knowledge of the container. You see, if you can get the knowledge of the container, then you have the full knowledge of the content. Universe is the content of the self, of the infinite, of the Brahman, of the divine, of the Satchidananda. Well, if you are identified with it, then the whole content of universe is within that infinite consciousness. You know it by containing it. The difficulty now is that one wants to contain it by possessing. With a limited instrumentation given, with a little body, so it's a small nervous system with very small power, and with a mind that always requires data of the sense for its operation. How can he possess this all? You see, it is, how can you contain, yes, you can contain the all in consciousness, but the play of ignorance and fall into ego and dualities compels this impulse, very impulse to contain the all, to take the form of desire, and then we want to possess all. Now, possession by an external, clutch or external hold is impossible. And it is this running after possession of the all by each and every individual ego that creates what people call conflict, is it not? Conflict is only nothing else but each one trying to possess the all at the same time. Each is trying to possess all at the same time and is clashing against the other because they are limited. Because when you possess the all in consciousness, then you do not run after clutching. That is what the Isha Upanishad says, Ma grudakasya siddhanam. You see? Yes. Isha avasyam idam sarvam, when all this becomes fit habitation for the Lord, and when one realizes that whatever movement of the cosmic movement takes place is a movement of that supreme, all-governing, infinite power, well, then it is Magrudakasya Siddhanam. Then don't try to possess somebody else's wealth, because it is your wealth, really speaking, when you rise into that consciousness. The whole of it belongs to you. It's not necessary to go in for an external clutch or possession, you see. But the deformation of this original impulse to possess all takes many forms, one of which primary and very disturbing factor in the vital is this impulse of, impulse, action, desire and ambition. That is the form which this takes place. And it is those that really are what you call the problem of man. The solution lies not in suppression, not in rejection, not in saying, oh, When you do this, the complex comes. It is not by that external knowledge that you will get rid of. Take hold of the original impulse to possess all. How will you make a man possess the delight of all? The delight that I am in possession of all, it can come only by widening his consciousness and not by surface dealing with his, superficial consciousness, which only takes the surface play as if that were the root moving and dynamic causes of human psychology. Well, as Upanishad says in one place, if you want to know everything about the sound of the drum, you take hold of the drummer. And when you know and are identified with the drummer, you know all the play of the drum. Well, universe, the world, is itself manifestation from that infinite consciousness. And when you want to know this all, when you go to the origin from which is humanity, then you know the root springs of what is happening in the cosmos, what is happening to the world. That is what the Upanishad said when it said, Yena gnatena sarvamvidam vijnatam bhavati. True knowledge consists in knowing that by which all is known. That is knowledge. Yena gnatena, by knowing which sarvamidam vijnatam bhavati. All this becomes known. Well, that is true knowledge, not acquisition of facts by sense evidence and then working of reason upon it. That is a secondary process. It is called avidya. Avidya, not ignorance, but secondary knowledge. Knowledge of the superficial and secondary causes and not dealing with the root causes of man's problem. Mental awareness, therefore, the remedy lies in expansion of mental awareness into self-awareness. And this is the knowledge by identity. And you will see that life moves from, you can say, darkness to reason, from reason to greater light. In the beginning was the subconscious, all which was dark. In the middle is reason, which is a limited light, and the movement of life is towards light. Reason only prepares the being for this higher knowledge. And this superconscious, I will try to represent a little on the board so that you can see as well. Life, when you see life, that moves to light. From where does it come? Life comes into being from, well, you can say the subconscious. Yes. Yes. Subconscious, which is dark. We don't know at present by mind what it is. Life comes from the subconscious thought, which is dark, and it passes through the realm of reason, which is partial light. And it is moving to light, you see, a superconscious all. All. This is important, all. Here, the subconscious all, superconscious all, in between the realm of reason and senses where there is ego. You see? So, the movement is of life to light. And light passes from darkness of the subconscious all to the creation of partial light and play of mind and senses, egocentric and subject to duality. Well, it passes to superconscious all, which is the realm of light. And this light can penetrate and come down into mind. Mind of man, mental. You see, man's mind, you can say that. And when it comes to man's mind, it takes the form of intuition. This light coming down into the human mind, you see, man's mind takes the form of intuition first. You see? That's how the penetration of light also takes place in the other direction, partly. You see? Yes. Now, and this intuition that you see there is the intuition of a self which is infinite, a Purusha, a being, a subjective self of the whole cosmos. That is the first great intuition of all philosophies, all systems of yoga, and all religions. That there is a cognizing consciousness which is infinite. That intuition of all is the intuition of the Purusha. You see, this is consciousness. Purusha which is universal. This is the intuition from the superconscious light. Now we go to the next chapter, pure existence. Ninth chapter, is it not? That was eighth here. Yes. Or is it eighth chapter? Eighth chapter, yes.
The seventh chapter.
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, method of Vedantic knowledge. Yes, I come. Yeah. This brings us to the well construction of
Nothing got through the eighth chapter without telling us.
yes, I think part of it is there. Part of it is there. No Vedantic knowledge.
Life divine.
Yes, Life Divine, chapter 8. Partly we have covered the ground in this talk just now, what I have done. Not completely, partly. This brings to the forefront the problem of Vedantic knowledge.
Chapter 8.
Yeah, chapter 8. You see, methods of Vedantic knowledge, because probably I dealt with in one talk when we already had before I went out to Los Angeles as to what is knowledge, you see, because that is a problem question. What is knowledge? And what consists what people call knowledge? And there we dealt with the knowledge by identity as also a possible sort of valid knowledge. And knowledge by identity is not mystic, superstitious or something, abnormal, but normally known to almost the whole of humanity in the course of its cultural activity. There is no cultural activity in which something of the knowledge by identity has not worked. I showed that when you're talking about that. That knowledge by identity is always those people, when they don't want to accept, they always say, oh, that is a talk, it never happened. It is something that actually concerns humanity. Humanity has been constantly taking advantage of this knowledge by identity, first working by a process of intuition. Identity does not take place all at once, but when the identity begins, it overpasses the realm of reason and brings light of intuition, inspiration, revelation into human mentality. And it is that which has molded many of the forms of cultural expression of the human collectivities, even not only to say of individual life. The cultural activity of many nations and races has been so to say, formed by these great intuitions that came down from beyond reason, inspirations that came down and gave them values of life. It is not merely an old grandmother's tale to say that knowledge by identity is something that has happened to mankind. It is not something abstract in the air, which the modern people always try to or brush it aside by saying, oh, but that is a talk. It's never. They refuse to see the thing as it has already worked in the past. You study all your literature, all your poetic literature, all your artistic literature, and find out what is only rational and intellectual and what is not, and you will immediately see the contribution, which is of the superconscious realm of consciousness, penetrating its rays into the working of human psychology, human heart or human mind or human sense of aesthetics or human sense of harmony or sense of beauty or sense of perfection. It has all been influenced. Well, apart from that, methods of knowledge here we are discussing. And there I have partly covered the ground when I told you that the first instrument which man can and does use for his increase in knowledge is reason. And this reasoning faculty has double function, a mixed and dependent function and a pure function. I partly dealt with that subject just now. Now, when reason confines itself to sense data, to studies only the phenomenon, the appearances of things, then reason knows only the becoming, the change. Reason then does not know the being. Reason then cannot know what is changing. Only it knows how the change is taking place. or what kind of change is taking place, or what it is that undergoes the transformation or change, the reason doesn't know. It takes the starting point, but when it goes beyond the starting point of sensation and sense evidence, well, then reason rises into its pure realm of action. And this is necessary because the instruments of acquiring knowledge of sense mind by reason is a very imperfect and, a defective instrument which man deals. And it covers a very small part of the universal fact. Sense, how much can you see? Even not for 2 miles. You see, 2 miles, and how much can you touch? So the very limited and defective apparatus is there, and therefore it gives also of a very small area or part of the universal fact. And to correct the errors of the sense mind by reason is an important power of reason and a very valuable power. And pure reason brings us, therefore, from physics to metaphysics. Knowledge of facts of life to the interpretation and understanding and generalization, a view of the world based upon evidence which is given and corrected. You see, that is how reason acts in its purity. It ceases to be mixed and dependent and becomes pure. There are, for instance, fact, idea of fact, ideas about fact. But these two, even when the idea is very correct and representative of the fact, even then it cannot satisfy man, because a concept is incomplete without experience. Conceptual knowledge is there, but it is only experience which substantiates and makes it concrete. You see, now, I gave you some instance when we're talking about knowledge by identity, isn't it? That you read an essay on the constitution of sugar. And when you read the essay on constitution of sugar, chemically you get an analysis and a formula, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen and so on, and internal constitution of sugar and its effect on the human system, and its necessity to use as a fuel in the human system, metabolism, and all kinds of things you understand, and its reaction when it comes in contact with the human taste. Well done. All that you read, well, that gives you some idea what sugar is. It is conceptual knowledge. When you taste sugar, well, you have an experience which gives substantiate the conception of sugar. Or you did an essay on anger and read all the symptoms of what is anger as a passion or as an impulse rising. Well, you read and you understand that the human being loses its reason and loses its poise and loses equanimity, and suddenly disproportionate to the cause it rises to an impulse of expression which is abnormal, and then eyes become red or lips become red and all kinds of, yes, you read all that. Well, you have some concept of anger, idea, but you get angry for 1 minute, and then you know anger. You get angry for 30 seconds only and come back. That was anger, and you know it far better than you knew by concept. Well, the fact and the concept, though they may be adequate, reason and correct and valid as far as they go, they are never satisfied. The experience, without experience, it is incomplete. Well, yes. Now, and therefore you will see that all experience is psychological. This is very strange. They say all experience is material. All experience is nervous. Even psychology is only reaction of nerves. You electrically, make the brain react, and then it becomes blind, or eyes can't see, or something happens to your lobe somewhere in the mind, the brain, and you see that is all human psychology, reduced to physiology of the nerve. You see, drugging the nervous system and trying to prove that parapsychology is trying to find out that suprasensual knowledge is possible in the transference of thought without intermediate, medium is possible. All these are so well known to anybody who knows ABC of yogic life that there's no use trying to bother about it first. And secondly, to reduce the whole of experiment on human psychology to its nervous system is to take the hold of the thing, as Aurobindo says, by the wrong end. The first hand is the one who interprets. There are no inevitable reactions in the nerves. Remember that. All this is the first equation. And because it's a constant habit, we promote it into the dignity of a law. Absolutely, there is no such law for the nervous system to react only in a particular way. Absolutely, there is no such law. Nervous system reacting to certain, not at all. You can react quite differently. The consciousness is put and the pressure of consciousness is brought to bear upon the nervous system. The nervous system is refused to react as normally you find in 99.9 cases the normal reactions. No, certainly not. This is taking a habit and promoting into a law. A constantly repeated habit. Yeah, that we say. But a habit is a habit. That's all. It's not a law of nature. Because this reaction and dynamic movement is subject to an entity, to a spiritual being. And this spiritual being is governing, can govern. If does not govern today, it doesn't mean it has no power to govern. Because in 99.9 cases, the human individual does not go to the true, original, the governing power, the psychic being or the vital being or the mental being, and put its force upon the nervous system. Therefore, the nervous system normally seems to react in a one particular way. But that does not mean that that's the law. As soon as there is an intervention, you will see that nervous reactions completely change. Absolutely. There is nothing to warrant that nerves must react in a particular way to a particular stimulus. There is no such law. General habit, yes, that's all right. Now, all experience is psychological because sense mind interprets what the senses receive. Sensation has no absolute value. There is one first, the traveling of the sensation to the receptive point, and then there is a valuation there at the point of reception. Good, bad, indifferent, high, low, desirable, undesirable, present, repellent. All. Well, this is interpretation. And it depends upon governing that center as to what value will be given to a sensation. I know, of cases in military life where, amputation is done without anesthesia. The whole leg is chopped off, and the man is not taking any anesthesia. Oh, he said, I'll cut it. Now, what do you say of that reaction? Soldier having lost his foot and hand walks 3 miles in Napoleonic campaign while retreat from Moscow was being done. How to react? Well, in Greece, 175 miles the man runs to carry the message of the Olympics. Facts. I'm putting a nervous fact now. How does it happen? Tell me. If this is the law by which you put a current and find out, and all this can display of surface psychology, it's not psychology at all. These are facts I'm telling you. In Greece, there was the one man had to run, you know that. In Tibet, even the man has to run. He flies practically. In Tibet, he used to fly to give the information about a certain holiday to be observed after a certain interval, 10 years or 12 years. And he carries a bell in his hand. And Madame David Neal, that French lady who was for 18 years in Tibet, has seen this man. She said she didn't know. And one day she heard the bell and she came out and saw that he was taking strides. Just 10 feet, 20 feet, 15 feet like that. He was not flying in the air like that, no. But he seemed almost, to skip. He didn't walk. And because he had to cover the whole of Tibet within 2 days or within 48 hours or something like that. In Greece, the man ran from Athens to Sparta. These are facts which I'm telling you. So it is no use putting the normal nervous reactions and actions that happen as if they were the governing law of human psychology. There is a governing entity which has to be tackled, really speaking, if you want to know human psychology. Well, apart from it, all experience is psychology. Sense mind interprets what the senses receive. Psychological experience has also double action. Awareness is becoming. When you become aware, it is phenomenal. It is already becoming. You experience something on the basis of a substratum of being. Being undergoing a transformation of state is self-awareness. Awareness of anger, awareness of normality, awareness of peace, awareness of an object lying before you. Well, that is all the becoming. Our own existence we know by an act of identity. We know that we are simply because we know it by identity with ourselves, is it not? And this separation prevents this all knowledge, this identity from being active. And this limitation is the creation of the ego, as we talked just now before, and limitation to the physical contact and mental operation. All knowledge to the normal human mind is, well, subject to the limitation of evidence of the senses and operation of the mind. Now, this limitation is imposed on the individual because of the creation of ego and duality. This limitation is the evolutionary condition necessary. But the dependence on this evidence on the operation of mind, he calls in Life Divine, is only the regularity of a dominant habit. Mark the words, regularity of a dominant habit. It is not a rule. And this is proved by mind directly knowing what is to be known. There are so many evidences to this that mind can know the thing directly without any intervention of any sense in between. There are people who have actually given a description of places where they have never been. You put a man into hypnosis, and then he gives you a description of the city of New York sitting here. And he says, there, your house. Oh, is it number so and so? Yes, some man is going inside. You will be surprised to know how this evidence has been used by even England to trace crime. Dr. Rapier, I think, case of Dr. Rapier was an eminent case of knowledge by clairvoyance. They could not find 30 murders and they could never trace the man. Never trace. Ultimately, somebody told them, why don't you go to somebody who can read, the crystal reading as they call it, you see. And so they went to somebody and said, well, let us know. After all, we failed to trace the criminal after 30 or 32 murders. So she said, well, who is the man who has done this thing? So this lady sat down and they said, oh, there is a street in London. Oh, there is a brass plate on the house. It reads so and so. Upstairs there is a man. There is a laboratory. Well, I don't know. That is the man. That is how I see it. Well, they traced. They found he was a medical man having a laboratory, and he was dissolving all the dead bodies in chemicals, the acid, nitric, hydrochloric acid, and all the dead bodies were dissolved. Never a trace was found. This was case. I am speaking authentically from a report in London paper. Now, this knowledge is not by sense evidence. What I mean is that evidence of something absolutely direct knowledge by mind. So can telepathy, so can thought transference take place. Operation of a will at a distance is so well known, I think, AE. The famous Irish writer George Russell, in his book Candle of Vision, he has spoken about this experience of his own. How he was sitting in Egypt, and a friend of his saw him sitting at the pyramid in moonlight and wrote a letter to him. So, what I mean is that when you talk to these people who don't want to believe, as Aurobindo says, you can't make a man believe when he has decided not to believe. Modern mind absolutely refuse to believe because they have other potentialities in which direction in which they want to try. Welcome to that. There's no harm. You try external possibilities and potentialities of wireless and all kinds of gadgets. That's all right. No harm. But that it is possible without any intervention, why don't you admit? Because it's a fact. There's no harm in admitting a fact. After all, you're not admitting something that has not happened. It is evidence of men like Sir Oliver Lodge or Sir William Crookes or, Conan Doyle or people who are probative, who have honesty and who are known for being people who know what they are talking about. I mean, they are not interested in telling lies anyway. You see, that is what modern mind is trying to do. No, 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 don't look after unpleasant and undesirable facts. That's all. You need not try if you don't want to try. But that mind is capable of a direct knowledge without intervention of any sense apparatus is something that I think doesn't require much proof unless you are, cussed and don't want to accept. Say that no, I refuse wealth, then his son doesn't matter. Well, this is a limitation which is an evolutionary condition, but mind can directly know. Hypnosis and other phenomena are already well known, you see. Now, a balance is between mind and matter. Why this mind is not able at present to act freely and always? You will say that if this is a faculty, why does not all mind do? Because mind is now dependent, mind is material, mind is encased in matter. Therefore, its dependence on matter has become now very great and almost an established habit. You see, because mind is not operating in its purity. There is a balance between mind and matter, and normal waking consciousness also is so much habituated to depend on the evidence of the sense being, extroverted, that direct knowledge to it is not possible by the mind only. See, that is all. Now, now, but sense mind has got a sovereign action also possible. For instance, it is possible to know the weight of an object without weighing. Even sense mind can act sovereignly if it is trained. You see, you can know the weight of an object, distance of something. This is also a possible, a sovereign action. And even this only enlarge the field of the phenomenon. These do not ultimately, even mental knowledge, direct, knowledge of the object by mind, or enlargement of the sense mind and sensation capacity to know directly without going through material process. Even if you succeed in doing, it will not enlarge your consciousness into infinity. No. It will only enlarge the field of phenomenon, field of becoming. Sri Aurobindo is pleading that you must attack the field of being, where you are, what you are. You have to deal with what you are. And then cease to be only a little body, little desire, a bundle of desires and emotions, and bundle of ideas. From mental awareness to self-awareness to cosmic awareness, that the whole is one. And it is in each, the whole is present. That is what is coming in the next chapter, I think. You see, the own awareness and you see, the knowledge of the content is contained in the knowledge of the container. You see, mental awareness must expand into self-awareness, then the content of the Atman, which is universe, will be known. And that is the equation which we worked out just now. Now, this gives us to the intuition behind the mind is always working. We show the first intuition, that was the intuition of the one Purusha. The formula is I am he. First formula. Soham asmi. I am he, the infinite, the unlimited, the divine, the supreme, the Lord, or the cosmic consciousness. Then tattvamasi, thou art that. So not only I am he, but that which I cognize as outside myself, thou, well, thou art also that. And third is sarvam khalu idam brahma. All this that I see is the infinite. Well, in these three intuitions is contained the content of knowledge by identity. If you want to know the knowledge by identity, all the three must be simultaneously satisfied, not one. If you say, I am he, then you will reduce all this to Maya only. If you realize only I am he, then the insistence of the human mind is such that it becomes partial to the experience that comes even of the Supreme and reduces the all to non-entity, to non-existence, to illusion, to zero. It says the others don't exist. No, that also is the working of that one. And then I am he, when you say all is that. Not all this is that. Sarvam khalu idam brahma. Idam means this. In Sanskrit, idam means that which I see. That which I see, that is idam purodrashyamanam. What I see in front is idam. Well, what I see in front, all that is the Brahman. Yes, that the three in harmony will give you the content of true knowledge. See, knowledge of being, not knowledge of becoming, which reason, sensation, pure action of mind, even enlarged action of sensation gives us knowledge of the becoming. Knowledge of the being is widening of mental awareness into self-awareness. And this self is He, the infinite. I is He, the infinite. Thou is that, the infinite. And all this is that, the infinite. Well, then you have covered the formula. You see, we covered the formula of all knowledge. And this intuition by process of knowledge by identity has worked in humanity intermittently. It has worked now and then brilliantly, brought some results, but it is not ordered intuition. It is not yet organized into expression in life. The problem today which Life Divine wants to tackle us or want us to tackle is that this knowledge must now become ordered. Because otherwise, without organized expression of it, it remains somewhere like a light, and very often it lends itself to a misinterpretation or an exaggeration which does not allow the aspiration for perfection to be fulfilled in life. Well, today, it is the reasoning power that leads and not intuition. To human being today, intellect is the leading power of man's, instrument of knowledge. And pure reason has led to practical reason, means science. Pure reason has been trying to create, effective field as practical reason means scientific development. And this reason proceeds by analysis, by division, and takes the facts and ultimately puts them together to form the whole. And then he says that instead of that, let this reason take cognizance of one fact. The fact of the Purusha, the subjective consciousness. Consciousness is the basic fact of the universe. Consciousness is the fundamental fact of cosmos. And the Sad Brahman, or the true being, the infinite being, well, it is that which is the standing intuition on which this reason can base its operation. Well, then perhaps this reason can give us some clarification of the process of knowledge. Now, I have one more little passage to do, and with that we will close to the morning's reading. It is here, there are people who all the time say to us that this knowledge of identity is good, but it's practical. Does it work? That is again and again, because the immediate and the present always overpowers man's reasoning power. Now, Sri Aurobindo has answered this question in some of his writings, and I think that it is necessary for us side by side to understand that we want to dispel the notion that attainment of this higher consciousness, this infinite consciousness, is something abstract and without any dynamic consequence in life. Somebody asked him that, we doubt whether what you do is right. His disciples were people who were allowed liberty. You see, a guru in ancient traditional sense would not allow 1/100th of the liberty which Sri Aurobindo allowed us. See, we could sit with him on the table like that and smoke. No Indian traditional guru would allow a disciple first to sit on the same level of the chair. Well, if the guru is sitting, you sit down or you take a lower seat. When that is understood. I'm taking out tradition. It may not be very nice for people to feel independent and equal and all sorts of things, but that is the tradition in India. That the guru is one who gives you knowledge, and he does not give you information and doesn't write books and thesis. He gives you something which changes your consciousness. And therefore, you take it from him as if you have to receive something from him. But he allowed us, enormous amount of liberty because he knew the age and he himself was a product of modern age. He was not an ancient somebody in the limbo of the past, the Rip Van Winkle who suddenly awakened to this modern world. He knew the modern world more far better than many modern people know it. You see, he'd been to England and Europe and had his whole training absolutely in English language. He didn't know his own mother tongue. So he allowed this freedom, and so he allowed all kinds of questions. So Dilip could put all kinds of nonsensical questions, I tell you, idiotic questions almost. Oh, you say like that, but how can I believe what you say? To a guru in India, you see, he would say, get out of this house and do what you like. You are quite unfit for this path, get out. But he was so kind and considerate, and he thought perhaps there is some thing why he is attracted to this path, why he came leaving everything to me. Now he is full of difficulties. How can I reject him? There is 5% of chance in him. For 90% of his stupidity, I can't reject him. That's how he used to look at it. And so he used to allow him to all kinds of questions. To all of us he allowed. Not only Dilip, everybody he allowed all kinds of questions. Now there was one question. So he said to him, when he wants to become a little strict, his strictness even has a softness about it, very soft. So I must remind you, he's telling, I must remind you that I have been an intellectual myself and no stranger to doubt. So I also know what is doubt. Both the mother and myself have had one side of our mind as positive and as insistent on practical results, and more so than any Russell can be. Dilip put the idea that I met Russell and he's an intellectual, great this, that, and I know what Russell stands for, and Russell can ask for practical result. I also know as much to demand from my process as Russell can demand. We would never have been contented with shining ideas and phrases which a Roland, means Romarola, or another takes for gold coin of truth. Shining phrases and ideas. I think I can say that I have been testing day and night for years upon years, more scrupulously than any scientist, his theory or his method on the physical plane. Well, this he wrote in 1932. So that gives you one idea. Then say that when do you concentrate, what do you do? Students, teachers, you see, disciples could ask anything nonsense. Well, how do you concentrate? We say, when I concentrate, I work upon others, upon the world, and upon the play of forces. Then the people ask, how can invisible force produce tangible results? He says in one letter, the invisible force producing tangible results, both inward and outward, is the whole meaning of yogic consciousness. Who would be satisfied with such meaningless hallucination and call it power? If we had not had thousands of experiences showing that the power within could alter the mind, develop its power, and add new ones, bringing in new ranges of knowledge, master the vital movements, control the conditions and functioning of the body, work as a concrete and dynamic force on other forces, modify events, etc., we would not speak of it as we do. But Dilip put in one of his letters, but is this power which is a concrete? So he replies to him, concrete? What do you mean by concreteness? Spiritual force has its own concreteness. It can take the form like a stream, for instance, of which one is aware, and can send it quite concretely on whatever object one chooses. Then he said that you say that you are working with a spiritual force, then it must succeed. He said, no, spiritual force is one powerful force, an energy added to the complex of forces that are already at work. It is not as if a tabula rasa, a clean slate was given and the spiritual force was put upon it. You understand, there is a complex of forces working in a situation, in an event, a world war. Now, how many millions of forces are working? You have no idea. Well, in that, there is a one additional force that is given. And that acts as also a molding influence. It is not a small force that is put. It's a very powerful force, but it is working in the midst of so many complex forces of ignorance. national interest, egoism, selfishness, sacrifice, country, patriotism, cause, ideals. How many? This is nothing. What I am counting is nothing. There are economic forces there. So in a world situation where, a great clash of interest takes place and collectivities are brought into, contact with each other in a conflict, well, there is a world of forces that is at work. And on that situation, when a cosmic consciousness or a divine consciousness is made to act, it is not act as if it is given a clean slate to produce whatever result it likes, but it produces some result which would not have come if it had not acted consciously. Certainly, that is true. Now, he is saying, I have always said that the spiritual force which I have been putting on human affairs, such as the war, is not supramental but overmental force. And that when it acts on the material world, it also is inextricably mixed up in the tangle of lower world forces, that its results, however strong and however adequate to the immediate object, must be partial. Now, this impartiality of observation and, a sort of a detached view of his own work is a quality which I have never seen in any spiritual person, I tell you. I have never seen that power in anybody else. This power of, complete detachment and impartial observation. Absolutely, that is something that took my breath away when I first knew it in 1918. Tremendous. That he could be conscious of it and yet know how much and how far and not further. Well, that is exactly something which I think is more a proof of the reality and concreteness than anything else. Here, I often use the force alone without any human instrument or any other means. Then somebody asked that you are working in the ashram and disciples. So how do you work upon the world and world events and other things? Well, certainly my force is not confined to the ashram and its conditions. As you know, it is being largely used for helping the right development of the war and of change in the human world. It is also used for individual purposes outside the scope of the ashram and the practice of yoga, but that is silently done and mainly by a spiritual action. Now here you get some conception of, you see, of the concreteness of whether it can produce result. We are talking about knowledge by identity and whether the attainment of and the possibility of enlarging the human consciousness into a greater awareness can be dynamic. Well, here is some aspect of it which I think is germane to the question, and that gives us a greater, faith that after all, when we do it, much will not be lost, and perhaps much may be gained in the world of dynamic movement. Man's faith that only mind, only scheme, only social, system or social movement or political movement or altruistic movement or something outward, that alone is action. And if we do only realize and ascend to a higher consciousness, perhaps we become inactive and ineffective. Well, to that, I think the declaration and writing of Sri Aurobindo give a very definite and a very encouraging reply that after all, you might perhaps attain a dynamic which is not possible with the limited knowledge of mind and the human organism as it stands at present.
Ask a few questions.
Yes, yes, 10 or 15 minutes at least.
I have one. But I was thinking when you were talking, to be in the world and not of the world is really the challenge in your teaching, in a sense, isn't it?
Not nearly that much. Not nearly that much.
What I'm thinking is...
No, not to be on the world or not of the world, but to accept the world as the world of the divine. One. And to bring about or to bring into life or into world as you put it, world means life. To bring into life the light of the divine.
Well, I had a
Yes,
finish the
yes.
question, yes. What I was thinking too was, now sometimes where there's a group who are all, thinking in this manner and in current, would be one thing, but if you be in the world and striving not to be of the world, that would be quite difficult, wouldn't it?
Not difficult if one wants to do it. One always does what one wants to do. That is what always struck me as something which I have never understood here in Europe, I mean.
Yes.
That people always say, oh, we can't do this, we have no time. I never understood it, to tell you frankly. I tell you frankly, I must be very frank, but I never understood it in my life. And they say, oh, you see, for instance, 6:30 we have meditation. Now look, I'll give you very practical instance. In India, nobody would miss it. Nobody. You come 100 miles, you come for meditation, then I have to get up in the morning. Of course you have to. Then you can't do it lying down. Then you're sleeping, you can't do meditation, certainly. Oh, I have to eat. Of course you have to eat. 365 days you are eating. So eating has to be shoved. That's why it is you put in its place and say, yes, we'll eat, but do this first. Well, that is the way to look at it. If you see, that is why it doesn't happen. The pressure of the immediate, the value that the individual or the group gives to current values of conventional life. Oh, this must be done only in this way. There is no such rule. Break everything, then everything is easy. You break rules, break conventional habits, and say, no, from tomorrow I'll do otherwise. That's all, nothing. What is that? Oh, but I have to come. You have to. Of course. I have to come 10 miles, 20 miles. You have to come. Naturally. You can't do it sitting. So, what is it? Oh, but one turn. Yes, one turn, 10 turn, 20 turn. All the work that is intended you must never, that is the, single-minded devotion or concentration of the will or aspiration for a purpose. Now, that you can't flag it. You can't, drive by outer force in anybody. This can't be done. This must come from within. This is Agni in the Vedic language. This is fire. If you want to know what is fire, that is fire. That is fire. That says nothing. No compromise with any obtaining conditions of individual habit or collective convention of social life. You have to outgrow. Then you can establish new value. Then the divine value can be centered in you first, and then around you, then in 10%. That is how it has to be established, you see.
But in India, isn't it true, the undercurrent, the spiritual undercurrent is with you, so to speak. And in countries,
and that is all the more necessary here to do it.
Oh, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just this has just occurred to me when you were talking.
Yes, that is true.
The undercurrent, the spiritual undercurrent is not with you, you might say.
Yes,
To the degree that it's with you.
No, it is almost against you. Why? There's nothing to hide it. It's all right. Well, you take the conditions as they are and try to, all the more necessary that you should bring the full force of concentration of aspiration to bear upon it. And that is what I told at Los Angeles. They said, but then I said, look here, this has to be done. And someone of you has to do it. No outsider. It's from inside. It must come here, the fire. You can't drive it. No, it must come. It has got to come. If you want to change values of life and meet the challenge of the times and put down economy in its proper place and not allow it to govern life and be the highest value of human life, individual and collective, then somebody has to say, down with economics. We don't care. That's how it has to be done. That's it. We don't care for money. Somebody was telling me when I spoke something about this. I said, how much can you give for it? For changing your life, what are you going to give after all? In terms of outer exchange, what can you give? What can I give to Aurobindo? Even my life would not be enough. So, you see, that's not the correct way. You must break the value. That's all. Go by your values, that's all, and society will take care of itself. You need not flout and, be what you call insubordinate or you need not go in for something that is not, this, keep conventions that are harmless to yourself and don't come in you, you observe. Be gentle and kind to somebody who says, I don't believe. All right, don't believe. What can you do? You can't force. Let's say, though you what you are doing is stupid. You say, yes, there are many stupid people. We are one of them. That's how you do this. What can you do? You say, I don't believe in what you do. Yes, you are free. This is a democratic age. You need not believe. You are free to not to believe. I am free to believe. It's quite all right. Nothing wrong. I need to take it quietly, and because that is how you have to proceed. But when it comes to the essential, you stand firm and you have the fire. And you say, no, nothing doing. It is I'm going to do that and nothing else. Well, then the thing gets done. It gets done. There is no doubt about that because you are not alone. You have to always remember this: that the whole of the divine force is behind you. If you are true to that call of the soul, you are never alone. Never. Not even in the jungle of Africa, I was alone. So, when I had the difficulty with the immigration officer, well, I was quite alone. And yet, I was all right. Nothing wrong.
Would it be true, Purani, even having a greater opposition also, if one was true to this divine call, there would even be maybe an opportunity to even increase quicker growth?
Quicker growth, yes. Yes, yes, of course. It is that. It is only one has to know that he must not compromise on the fundamentals, on the inner life, and on the need of spiritual growth. There should be no compromise with any outside value. Then one, you need not go and fight or disturb or destroy nothing. When they come and knock, you see that if it is harmful, you bear the knock. If it is harmful, you reject it and throw it out. Otherwise, you try to create as much goodwill as possible so that others also may try to follow. If they have the inner call, I mean the inner sense awakened, others also may take to it. You try to be sympathetic with goodwill to all. Mm-hmm. We should maintain a goodwill for everyone. We don't want to feel that because we are doing spiritual work or trying to do spirituality, we are superior to other people. Nothing of the kind. Nobody is superior to anybody. Divine is superior to all. That's all. And if one seeks that, well, he might plan to do good to himself and do good to others. That's all.
Okay. One thing that almost seems to me to conflict in a sense, at least I can't seem to coordinate, because with Sri Aurobindo emphasizes self-surrender and the grace of the divine, but
that is when you come to the method of yoga, isn't it? Yes.
To use intellect and reason seems to conflict with this.
No, when you have decided to live your spiritual life, then this very process will show you why surrender is necessary. We have come up to here now to an infinite consciousness, isn't it? Up to the reason, you are not present all through, but life divine is trying to put down an ideal to the human mind. And rationally, the process works out that there is an infinite of being, consciousness, and delight at work. Man is only one term of it, and on each term, the totality of the Supreme is present. Totality of the Satchidanand is in every blade of grass and every grain of sand. If the whole of it was not present, even sand cannot be sand and grass cannot be grass. Now, on this truth, we are proceeding. And the problem is to enlarge the mental or human consciousness into that infinite consciousness. And there he says, we have just said that reason has its own limitation and two functions, a mixed and dependent and an independent function. Even independent reason is not capable of solving the problem because reason is dealing with phenomenon and not with the self or being. Reason can accept one intuition that there is an infinite subjective self at work in the universe. This much reason can accept because that's an intuition which has been standing all over the world from the beginning of human history. Something has been felt to be at work. Something. And then you call it as, he calls it Purusha, subjective self, and infinite being. And infinity of being is taking cognizance of all this. That is the first intuition. As far as reason can go is that far. Now, when you take up the process, then the human has to give himself up to this infinity in order that the infinite may be able to work in him. It is a very simple process. Surrender is not at all anti-rational or irrational. It is very rational. If you allow a very wider current to work upon you, you open yourself to it and contact that, and so that it may come into you, isn't it? If a very vast reservoir of power, infinite power is somewhere else, and you are at a lower level, then you establish a contact between yourself as pipe, is it not? That is your surrender to it. Then if the current is able to flow, otherwise the current cannot flow into you. It's very simple. If you stand closed completely and say, there is an infinite reservoir and here I am, now I am great, the current is greater, but I can't give up myself, then you remain where you are and the current is there and there's nothing wrong. It's quite all right. When you say, no, I want now that to flow into me, then you establish a channel. And the channel by which you establish is your surrender. Surrender means opening yourself. You see, the sun has risen and you say, now my windows are closed. You say, but I open my windows. That is surrender. Then the sun is able to penetrate and come into your house or into your room and light it up. That's all. It is very simple for people who have, earnestness of seeking. It is difficult for people who are very egoistic and say they are something very precious and wonderful and marvelous, and they have so much to give. What they have to give, I don't know, because they have only ignorance to surrender, isn't it, after all? What has man to give as if he is having a golden social possession that, oh, if this is lost, what is lost after all? What is a man? What is the power of man? Few ideas, little carbon, hydrogen, calcium, phosphorus, nitrogen, that's one. Desires, impulses, which are common with the animal, and a few ideas, and the idea that I'm very great. It's the greater vanity than any other creature has. That's all that man has. And that only has to surrender, nothing else. It's very simple. If he takes a very objective view of what himself is, he would think, if there is such a being, I would like to gain by giving up this nonsense. Isn't it? After all, giving up is nothing much precious.
People have a little confusion about giving up the ego. They think, then what would there be? When you draw a blank.
Yes.
Some people have that. Was that what you were thinking?
No, actually, I had no fault to find with the surrender. I'm wholeheartedly for that, and I can understand. I don't understand the reason part.
That's right.
It seems like there's
Better
a
not
lot
to.
of intellectual.
Better not to. It's bothering your head for nothing.
Some people need that. I think that was a bit.
They are afraid of losing their personality. They think that personality is a very precious product of life and you should not lose your personality. Really speaking, surrender fulfills your personality as your egoism can never do. Surrender is not losing yourself but gaining a higher self. That is really the truth. When you surrender, you gain, you never lose. You gain what you could never gain. What was it?
I don't know whether what is a very sensible thing to say, but I think most of us, we have a memory of radiance, which is there and can never be put out. We're always trying to go back to it. Because we feel it's part of our being. It isn't something that's never known to us. We know that it is part of us, and we long to behold it. We long to go back to it because we want to that. But we don't know how or when, but we know we did.
Yes, that's it. It is that aspiration itself can be an active force, you see. A constant aspiration that I want to contact this higher consciousness, aspiration that I want to become that and cease to be what I am now, that you maintain either in the heart or in the mind. So a constant aspiration, not a desire.
No.
I told you that. I dealt one day with a distinction between desire and an aspiration. You see? So an aspiration is the effort of the being to change and widen. That is aspiration. The being itself wants to widen. It is not busy with the process of instrument, mind and emotion and vital being and impulses and desire. No. It is the very, what I am, I want to change. You understand?
Yes.
Yes, that's it. And there you maintain that will that I want to change. An aspiration that I want to change. Idea in the mind or in a flame in the emotion or a will in the vital that I must change. I must widen into a higher consciousness. Well, that is the first step of yogic life. That is how you do the yoga. It does not require to abandon life or to renounce anything. Decision of the will that well, aspiration is the first priority of life. Well, there you start yoga. Yoga is not something miraculous, marvelous, or abnormal. It's very normal when this call is felt or necessity for a greater perfection becomes dynamic and active in man. You see? Then yoga becomes very natural process. Only all the time you concentrate, whatever you are doing, you concentrate on the aspiration. That I want to widen into a higher consciousness. I want to contact the higher consciousness. And the higher consciousness is not absent because it is all the time present. An omnipresent reality, remember? Yes. So you are in the presence of somebody all the time.
Didn't you tell us before time that aspiration is the yearning of the seed to fulfill itself? Didn't you tell us before aspiration is like the yearning of the seed to fulfill itself?
Yes, yes.
Like the yearning of the seed of a tree.
Yes. When a seed is given a language, if seed had a language, it would say, I want to become a plant. I want to have, develop. I want to have flowers. I want to have fruit. Well, that is aspiration. That's not desire. Because the potentiality is there already. It's not asking for something outside. We had that one. That is aspiration. You see, it is the movement in the seed trying to realize its potentiality. Well, I suppose that's quite all right.
I can't understand why the nervous system and the habits and the process or processes by which we become more conscious or get new knowledge of any kind, whether it's of the physical or whether it's of the spiritual. I can't understand why the process itself is not something to be valued and to understand. For instance, now I know how true it is what you said about experience, but you taste the sugar and you have the experience of sugar. But since Dr. studies a great number of human beings and finds that too much sugar may bring about diabetes, and learns how to help correct that. Now, I'm well aware that if we are sufficiently conscious of the all, that could be conquered without the doctor's knowledge. But in our present level of development, don't we have to go along with the process to our beliefs?
Well, there is a little, I think, a sort of a misunderstanding, or rather a stress is more or less not understood. When I said about experience of sugar, I was only referring to its nature as an experience, not as an act of individual, nuance. Now this experiments with body, with nervous system, with disease, probing of causes and so on, of trouble, is certainly an extension of our knowledge. It is certainly a necessity of man. And the Isha Upanishad goes further to say that by this process, you conquer death. By this process, you conquer death. And by change of consciousness, you enjoy immortality. Avidyaya mrityum tirtva vidyaya amrutam ashnute. This is, by avidya, you conquer over death. The limitations of, by death you mean the limitations of human consciousness, that's all. So even by processes of reasoning and scientific advance and inquiry, What we do is add perfectly more and more till we come to the very limit of mortality, almost to the limit of mortality. So that all that knowledge is very important and good and applicable to life. The difficulty comes in when those who experiment with these things tell us or claim that this is the knowledge which is the knowledge of the fundamental and this is the human, then we say, well, we have our reservations, that's all. It is not that we don't stand for scientific progress. We say scientific progress is indispensable and valuable, but that is the one thing or one direction in which human culture or human development must go, and there is no other line of knowledge possible. Then we say, no, there is a line of knowledge of direct identity, which certainly can be equally valid and perhaps more applicable in certain cases than even physical knowledge. That's all that we want to say. And the limitation which I have observed is that the claim of these people to know that this is the knowledge of the secret or the process of psychology, as if it was the center of psychology. That I would say, no, it's a very small region of psychological knowledge which has some bearing to psychology, but psychology does not consist in only in that field. That is all that I wanted to convey, nothing else.
And when you, but when you through intuition, you bring something else into mind, if it's brought under the control of reason eventually, you are contributing that way to the growth of reason.
Exactly.
Enlarging reason.
That is why I say that organization of that intuition becomes necessary. And in fact, life divine is nothing else but organized intuition.
Well, then the process goes along with the growth, doesn't it?
Yes, certainly.
Becoming the being.
We take advantage of where reason stands and try to utilize reason in the process of self-realization. That's it. Reason is not rejected. Reason is almost raised to its maximum first, and when it overpasses the limits, it knows why it is overpassing, in fact. And that is its greatest contribution.